So, we didn't have the election that we wanted to have, and that's not good. There's no way to sugarcoat any of this. It's going to be a hard few years, and we have to steady ourselves for that and not be surprised by that. I personally prefer the term opposition than to resistance, and I'm going to continue to use the word opposition. Opposition is a more formal. We are the opposition. We're not just a resistance movement. We are the opposition party in government. And I think that's a more appropriate term, by the way. I would just encourage all of you to adopt it, and we'll be discussing that. There's going to be a lot of time to parse through what happened. I will be honest with you, I have done very little going into details because I think also there's many millions of votes still to be counted, which will shape some of our understanding of what happened. And I'm not going to even attempt to sort of give you, my initial take on everything. I laid out some ideas today. The good news is that I think of all the battleground Senate seats, I think the only one we're going to lose is Pennsylvania, but I still think we can win. And yes, someone asked if ballot curing helps. Yes, ballot curing is essential, and I'm going to try to get people's contact information for people who want to cure ballots in any of the states that are still curing ballots. Nevada and Arizona are close. But it looks like we've won Michigan and Wisconsin Senate races. What happened in Pennsylvania, we'll be talking about for a long time to come. We did have some really important victories in North Carolina, even though we didn't win at the presidential level. They did break the supermajority in the legislature. That was a huge and important achievement. It means that the new governor can actually govern. He also has a majority in the cabinet, which has some other governing functions that matter. We beat particularly that crazy woman who was running for public instruction. We'll know more about that, in the next few days. Also, another big investment we made was Arizona, and Ruben Gallego looks like he's going to win there, even if we're not going to win at the presidential level. And in Nebraska, the blue dot, prevailed, even though it looks like Tony Vargas may not win. The House is still up for grabs. I think when I went to bed last night, I think the House Democrats felt better about things than where they are today. It's just very hard to know in these House races. Some of them are very, very, very close. And I will come back with more intelligent reporting on the House in my next post at Hopium. Hopium is going to go not 7 days a week anymore, or 6 days a week, which it's been from the beginning, but probably down to 3 to 4 to 5 days a week, depending on whether there's stuff that is important enough for me to take your time up. I'm going to rest a little bit over the next few weeks. I've worked very hard. I'm not a young person anymore, and I need to rest a little bit and get healthy, and I pushed myself really hard, to be honest, over what is literally the last 2.5 years. And so I'm going to take some time, but I'm going to continue. Hopium's going to go. I don't know what's going to happen with any of this, right? Who knows anything? We can't even think past, into next week or 2 weeks from now. And I haven't really given it a lot of thought. I've been through this before, though. I mean, what people need to realize is that, I've been through the victories, I've been through the defeats, and I've been in opposition. And what I talked about today in the post, to me, is really, really important, is that during the period after Bush won in 2000, which was in that time a deeply shocking loss, probably more akin to 2016 in some ways than to this one. The party went through this period of massive reinvention, and we learned how to talk to Hispanic voters, and we learned how to use the internet really well. And we built new institutions like Center for American Progress and Media Matters. And then my organization, NDN, grew out of this, and a group called the Democracy Alliance. There was, out of necessity, extraordinary innovation that happened. And, innovation happens in a party in a variety of ways, right? One of them is out of necessity of being out of power, where you need to invent new tools to be able to advance your politics. The other is through presidential primaries. And I think that one of the things that's hurt us a little bit as a party is that 2 out of our last 3 presidential elections, we didn't have a primary. And I'm a believer that primaries are healthy. They allow ideas to be tested. They allow candidates to emerge like Kamala Harris. It's a period of reinvention and testing. And we've only had, we didn't have a primary for, other than what happened between Bernie and the president, Hillary Clinton, which was not a really traditional primary. And then we didn't have a primary this time. And I think that we have like a pent up need for modernization and reinvention of the party. I've been through this before. I helped lead this process in the Bush years. I'm not, I have to make a big decision if I'm going to sign up for that all over again. I've done this once before, because it's not a quick thing. It's, we're now talking about plans for 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, slow grind building plans. And Hopium was built really for this election. And I have to give a lot of thought to, what happens with this amazing community we built. And obviously I'm not going to be posting every day about the crappy poll numbers from 538. I mean, but you should all realize that my background is that I ran a think tank that did economic policy and global economic policy and immigration policy. I mean, I have as much experience doing traditional policy work as I do sort of the strategic political work. And so, I don't exactly know what role I'm going to play. And it's not important right now. I mean, frankly, you guys have given me enough resources that I'm confident that this thing will, it's interesting. I've had about 1,000 people unsubscribe since last night, not paid subscribers, but regular subscribers. We've seen some nasty grams today on the chat. I want to just comment that virtually every obnoxious comment in the history of Hopium has come from a man. I just want to say that, by the way. It's almost universal. And because men feel that it's okay for them to be assholes to other people and be rude, and which is much less common with women who are far more civilized than men. And so I don't know exactly what's going to happen, right? But I think this argument that I'm making is one that's really important. This initial argument that we need to turn the generational wheel needs to keep turning, and we need to go forward, and we need to go forward because I think the party was always one of the central reasons I founded Hopium was that I felt that we didn't really totally understand the nature of the battle that we were in with MAGA and Russia and China and other countries, that they had that their decision, that in essence Trump's success emboldened them to believe that American democracy was on its last legs, and that they were escalating their engagement and support of that process of ending our democracy and returning to what I call a time of dominion and not freedom in my talks. And I felt that we were sleepwalking as a family into all this a little bit. And we just did, and I tried to use Hopium as a way to do one way of engaging, one way of fighting back and countering MAGA, which was to help this new grassroots movement that had emerged, that many of you are leaders of or part of, for all of you to become better and to sort of be your advisor and your counsel, somebody who'd been around for a long time. So how you could be better activists and citizens and grassroots leaders, because I became convinced of the power of this stuff that I was seeing with my own eyes as somebody of 2 to 3, 4 million proud patriots who weren't going to let democracy slip away on their watch. And so, we went to work, and we did a lot of amazing stuff in the last 20 months together. All of you, I hope that, so first of all, I just want to say, in the most profound and deep and emotional and passionate way that I possibly can, thank you, everybody, for everything that you've done and for leaving it all on the playing field for Kamala Harris and our democracy. I think that you understand now also how fulfilling this work is, right? This isn't just, I had the obligation to go do this and I needed to go do this, is that there's something deeply powerful about the work itself and working to advance our democracy. I mean, some of my favorite posts that I saw in recent days were people talking about the experience they had of going door to door and actually, or calling people and talking to their fellow citizens about the election and how meaningful that was, right? And I'll tell you that I have, there's a series of young people that I helped get on to the campaign, kids that I knew from the neighborhood, daughters of friends of mine, other folks that I stumbled along the way. And I talked to one of them on Sunday who was in Phoenix, Lincoln Cooper, who you may have seen in that picture in the New York Times of me in that interview from me in the spring. Lincoln went out and has been working for the Arizona Democratic Party since April in Maricopa County in Phoenix. And we talked on Sunday, and I said, I hope that when I encourage you to go do this and to be out with real people and to, for living in this kind of upper income, upper educated bubble that he grew up in here in DC, that this experience is going to change you the way it changed me, right? When I went out as a field organizer and lived in 2 presidential elections, I lived in 13 different states, and as a young guy from the New Yorker poster from the East Coast of the United States, the Acela corridor, living in places like Toledo, Ohio, and Des Moines, Iowa, and Southfield, Michigan, and West Palm Beach, Florida, and Los Angeles, California, and all these places that I lived and worked, Long Island, New York. I lived in a campaign. This experience of being with people and being connected to a moment in their lives where their hopes and dreams and aspirations were so manifest and so important that you walk away from that experience with an incredible sense of responsibility, I think, and a sense of like, hey, I've been given an opportunity, a special opportunity to work to make people's lives better. And, this is important stuff and I have to take it really seriously. And in addition to all the crazy things that happen on campaigns, of which one day I could do a session and just tell all my crazy campaign stories, right? Which will be amusing for you, all of you. But just to finish my ramble here, I think the question that some of you have been raising is that, why did all this money we raise and this work that we do not produce more? And how did Trump get so much done with so much less? It's a big question, it's a big question that we have to, as part of this discussion that happens inside the family in the coming months, we all need to get a better answer to that, right? I want an answer. So do all of you. You're small investors in this process. You deserve to know why it is that they decided that they could run without a field operation and without, spending a third of the amount of money we spent in the final few months. Why did they have a better outcome than we did? Well, this is one of the things we got to work through. And this is part of my belief that we need a period of really serious reinvention and reimagination of our politics. And I'm not saying that anything we did was wrong, but we need to understand why we didn't do better, right? And I think that given that sort of the theory of the case was always that we could close, you've heard me say this 1,000 times, we could close stronger, we had more ads on the air, we had more people talking to voters, the campaign was reaching people on the ground. But what happened, right? Well, we don't know, and we're going to find out, there will be, and I want to just warn everybody that in terms of just, since I've been through this process before, the amount of people who are going to be operating out of bad faith and out of self-interest in the way this debate happens is going to be, you got to be careful, just take everything with a grain of salt, right? Have more dinners with friends, take it easy. Don't rush into this. There is going to be on our side sort of mountains of bullshit that are going to be pouring out from all sides about, why didn't this happen or this, that, and why did she do this and why didn't this and blah, blah, blah. And it's just going to be full of just bad faith and self-interested parties covering their ass and everything else. And everyone's just got to go slow here. What I love is in the chat is when you guys will read something you find interesting and you share it, and then people talk about it and read it, right? I mean, I think that it's, and I'll try to do a better job of that. I don't often point to a lot of stuff because in some ways what's happened with Hopium is that Hopium was always so full because of all that fundraising stuff at the bottom, the volunteer thing, that it was harder for me to find room to link to other things that I found interesting. And also there's paywall problems, right, with some of this stuff. But I'll do more of that, I promise, going forward, to sort of do more of like, hey, here are some interesting things I've read that you may find of interest, right? And here's why. And because um and then yeah, I mean, and I think finally, I didn't really come scripted for this, is that I'm just really grateful to have been able to do all this work with all of you. You heard me say this in the video the other day that I released, but I get to, my bedroom's down the hall. I mean, our house is downstairs. I get to work out of my house. I hang out with my dog. And it's been weird in some ways for me as somebody who ran an organization that did millions of events and had dinners and big events in Washington and 100 politicians coming and all that kind of stuff, to working by myself basically. But it's been really gratifying because I haven't been working by myself. I've been working with all of you, right? I've been in community with all of you, and we've been doing amazing things together. And it's been and it's also super efficient. Like I mean, it's hard for you guys to believe this, but I regularly would get up at 7, produce Hopium to 10 to 11 o'clock, some days a little bit later, and then I would have meetings and calls with people, and then I would do TV often at night. And so these days were 15 hours long, on 2, 3, 4 nights a week, and when I was doing TV, when in these periods when I was doing a lot of television and or doing evening events, right? I mean, 12, 13, 14-hour days was the norm, right, for the last couple of years. And I can't keep that up, you know what I mean? Like, and stay healthy. And so I am going to slow Hopium down a little bit. It certainly won't be 7 days a week. I don't even, and I next week, what I'd like to do is I'm going to do an open thread on like, what should we do? Think about it. Don't post on it now. Wait, right? Just take time. Don't impulsively throw something out there, right? What do we do with this community that we built, right? It's a pretty remarkable group. And I don't know. I think that one of the things we have to realize, I'll give you a homework assignment as you think about this, is that if we're going to be in opposition, then more of our work for a time is going to be sort of in the information and policy warrior space, right? Where we're explaining what Trump is going to do and say and what it means, as opposed to what is the latest thing that Nate Silver said. And I have a lot of background in that, right? I mean, I come out of the policy world as much as I do the political world. And so, I think that this is a different assignment now, right? And we have to change and evolve with it. There's a different requirement and a different set of things that have to happen. Yes, there's going to be the roving band of people who go from special election to special election, and we've got Virginia next year. I mean, all those things will happen. I'm not worried about that. I mean, groups like Marcus, I mean, many of you are part of groups that are going to be permanently working. And I'll give a lot of thought to how, and I'm going to listen to all of you and get counsel from all of you about what we should do with Hopium and what's most useful to you, and it could be that we have more policy briefings to help you, make you smarter about things that are going on, to help you be more effective information warriors, right? But I haven't really done what I used to do a lot since I began Hopium, which is we weren't really in the policy debate. And that was because I just decided I was going to just be the loyal warrior and just go execute off of whatever Biden and then Harris were doing, without sort of engaging in a conversation, that we are in this urgent moment and we just needed to get on board and do our work. Well, we're in a different place now, right? We're in a different place now where, free flowing discussion and debate and consideration is also important. And I've got some opinions about things that it's possible I'm going to be a little bit more aggressive about sharing. But I think to conclude is that, so first of all, thank you all so much for everything and what you've done. We've done an extraordinary amount of good together. I mean, some of our core investments really paid off. By the way, we also, in Wisconsin, which we only did a little bit at the end, it looks like we're going to win the Senate seat there. So we contributed to that. So, some of our most important victories, we played an important part of in an election where we didn't have enough wins. The second thing is that what is also going to begin is the presidential primary is going to begin already. And we're going to see the next generation set of leaders, Josh Shapiro and Gretchen Whitmer and Pete Buttigieg and whomever it's going to be, start to emerge and rise up and come to forums like this. And so I think there's going to be an openness about this period, because there's really not going to be anybody in charge, right? I mean, it's sort of interesting when you don't have a president, the party is more, it's not as top down, and there's more entrepreneurship in essence, right? And that makes this period exciting and interesting also, right? And many of you got to meet really fun and interesting leaders here through the course of Hopium, right? We brought a lot of interesting people in. Third, is that this is going to be really hard, right? I mean, it's going to be really hard, and it's going to be bad. And we just can't expect it to be anything other than that. And the bad things are going to happen to the country. And we have to be ready for that. We can't have it crush us. We can't have it cause us to disengage. We can't, because it's going to be dispiriting and it's going to be bad. But we can't give up, because that's what they want, right? They want us to give up. We're not going to give up. But this is a bad thing happened last night. And, I have a part of me believes that he's not going to do half of the major things he's proposed, because there's going to be so unpopular. And then there's a limit to how self-destructive he can be. But also, I think we've learned with Trump that it's always the worst case, right? It's never not the worst case. And so I think we have to be prepared mentally, physically, in every way, emotionally, for what is going to be a really hard period for all of us. And that's why, you need to find places like this and other places that are safe places for you, and places that are, places where you feel community and feel like you can, where you can, one of the things I'm excited about, to be honest, I'm going to see my kids more. I'm going to go visit my daughter at school. I mean, I haven't seen my kids as much as I've wanted in the last few and a half years and a couple of years, and I'm going to do that. I'm going to hang out with Tug a little bit more and walk him more. And there are things I'm looking forward to, right? To have a little bit of time back to, to be happier, right? And because we're going to need to do that, because the things happening here down the street from where I live are not going to be happy. And so just be prepared for that, right? I mean, and we can't, then finally, I have one last thing, because it came up today in the chat, is that just on the data, I want to remind everybody that in the last week, all of the major forecasters tipped to favoring Harris to win. All of them. Economist, 538, Nate Silver, because the polling got a lot better for us in the last week, right? And then in the early vote was actually better than 2020. and we did better in the battleground states. And so all of the analysis that I did for you over the last year and a half, 18, 20 months, has been based on publicly available data, right? I don't do my own polling. I don't have any kind of black box where I go into the back room and pull stuff out. I do it. It's all very transparent, right? Like it's all publicly available data that's available to everybody. And what we saw in the data and what the campaign saw in their data and what the Trump campaign saw in their data, because the Trump campaign was telling everybody a few nights ago they were going to lose, was that we were going to win. And that didn't happen. And we still don't know why. But I want to be very clear about one thing, right? I am, as some of you have noticed in the chat, that there are times when I am a little bit quick to pull people out of the chat because they're spreading negative sentiment or they're just being assholes, right? Like we have a super no asshole threshold, like we're just all past that in our lives at this point for someone to come in and be self-indulgent and spread crap around, right? Sorry, we're just not going to let that happen. But the notion that I misled people or that I lied or that I have rose-colored glasses, that pisses me off. And I'm not going to be very tolerant of that because it's bullshit. And because the data at the end told us we were going to win. Now, was there a problem with the data and polling? Yeah, sure there was, right? There's already been a lot written about that in the last 24 hours. Was I wrong about this election being more like 2022 than 2020? Yeah, I was wrong about that. I mean, but I wasn't wrong about that based on the data, right? And so we'll talk more about that. But I'm willing to put up with a lot. I'm not willing to have people come onto my chat and tell me that I'm a liar. I'm not gonna put up with that. People need to be more discreet and graceful and respectful of me and frankly of everyone else here too, right? And we part of our zeitgeist here is that we respect one another, and respect one another means that you don't come in and take your ugliness and spread it and your fear and your anxiety and spread it all over the place for everybody else, right? We don't do that. We're not impulsive, right? We have respect. It means, come in and interact with your colleagues in a respectful manner and don't bring your darkness into our place, right? I mean, it's really, yeah, we're all frustrated. We're all angry. We're all scared. It's all part of it. That you got to leave that at Hopium's door. We're a place where we come do work, we learn, get better and stronger. This is not a therapy place. This is not a place for angry men to go get pissed off and yell at other people, right? That's just not what this place is. And we're different from that. And if people don't like that, they can go. That's okay. I don't mind. We got plenty of supporters. And so I just want to keep our dialogue here really respectful and thoughtful and hopium-ish, because it's very easy for it not to be right now and not to be over the next 6 months even, right? Okay, let me go into I'm not going to answer any raised hands today. Let me just go into questions. Carville just disappeared from the broadcast last night. I think he probably realized we weren't going to win and he freaked out because, by the way, I'm not the only one who said we were going to win. Everybody said we were going to win, right? Like even Nate Silver, right? So, yeah. Some people are raising the questions about how this data can be real and how did we so underperform from 2020? We don't know any of this yet. And this is also, I will just tell you right now, the other thing is that the campaign has an obligation to tell us what they think happened. Jen O'Malley, Dylan, and the team, very talented, wonderful people that, they need to tell us what they thought happened, and it's important, right? But I think that, let me just raise this whole question about the information ecosystem, and Tara and Dan Pfeiffer. I'll share I'll put into the next into a hopium in the next few days. It won't be tomorrow. Um, this conversation I had with at Closing Strong with Tara and Dan Pfeiffer last week about the information ecosystem and what happens when we're out of power versus being in power. And this is all stuff we're going to have to talk about, because what I was getting at earlier is that the loudness part of hopium, where we need to get loud, we're going to have to be as loud as possible, because he's now got his loudness and he's got the government and he's going to have the amplification of Twitter and foreign governments, and we're just going to have to, we got to fill some of the void. And this is why groups like Midas Touch and Pod Save America and Tara's organization Courier Newsroom and Resolute Square and Lincoln Project, I mean, all these organizations become even more important than before, because we are going to be far less loud. I mean, if we're lucky, right, we're going to have the House and Hakeem Jeffries is going to be the speaker. I don't know that that's a done deal right now. Um, and so, we're going to have a loudness challenge that's going to be very significant. And it's part of what I was getting at earlier, that the information warrior part of the hopium way is going to become more important. I mean, Amy raised, she said, we have trans kids, we don't feel safe, even in a blue state. Look, my 19-year-old daughter, I didn't think that was going to come. My 19-year-old daughter called me last night, and it was hard. It was hard. It was hard. I feel like, I think we all feel like we've let our kids down, right? And that's not a good feeling. And yeah, so we've got work to do. We have work to do. Sorry about that. I'm not answering about what we did wrong. Everyone's asking. There isn't a simple answer. There never is. I think we have to recognize. I do want to say, and I didn't say this earlier, and I'm remiss. I've known Kamala Harris for 20 years. And when I ran for chairman of the Democratic Party, some of you have heard me say this. When I ran for chairman of the Democratic Party in 2004 and 2005, 20 years ago, and I was beaten in the final weekend by Howard Dean, I almost became chair. It was very close. Kamala was one of my national co-chairs, and she campaigned for me. She spent a day with me in Sacramento. She was a young city attorney in San Francisco. And I've been very close to Gavin Newsom. Gavin's come on. Gavin's is a dear friend, and I helped him get elected mayor in 2003. And so I've been part of that kind of San Francisco mafia that became Gavin Newsom and Kamala Harris, and others, grew out of that world. And so I've known Kamala a long time. And I just want to say that the assignment she was given in July, and I think the reason why, when I look back on her language about being an underdog, which some of you are aware I didn't like, right? Because I felt like she was giving her power away to Trump in some ways. But I understand it, right? In the sense that she felt like this thing was there was so much serendipity to this, and it was so improbable, and that she had to take a campaign that was built for somebody else and turn the campaign on and unite the party and pick a VP and have the convention and beat Trump in the debate and everything else. Holy moly, did she perform at just an extraordinary level through this whole thing. And I think in some ways the tragedy for her is that she was put into a place where the likelihood of success was always not high. And because she was starting 3 points down, Trump had not been roughed up by us. I talked about this today, is that we failed to indict him properly, and that was a collective failure of many, many people. I'd like to believe that here, I hope all of you realize when you look back at our work about how aggressive I was in my language about describing him all the time. And I did that because I felt like we were not being forthright enough to our fellow citizens about who he was and what he represented. And I just want to say that I've been doing this a long time, right? I worked for Bill Clinton. I was an early Obama supporter in 2007. Her performance in the last few months is just going to go down in history as, one of the greatest political performances we've ever seen. And my heart is heavy for her because I think that she was given a very difficult assignment. And then, because she became the candidate without having gone through the process of a primary where you become, you earn your place and you have the consent of the governed, and that process of winning creates this power around you, this aura of being a leader. She had to go win an election against a very difficult person, big person, without having the consent of the governed behind her, which was always going to make this really hard, right? Because people, what happened at the end, you heard the campaign talk about this all the time. People kept saying, well, we don't know enough about her. We don't know. Well, that's because she didn't have that normal validation of winning as a way of it, by fellow Democrats. And so her assignment was so hard and so difficult. And she did an extraordinary job. And we're all going to be picking apart the election for the next 6 months. I think most of this is going to be useless and self-flagellatory, or whatever that word is, flagellation. But there are going to be some things that we really got to talk through about what happened in this election to learn from them, right? And to not have it be there can't be taboos here, right? Everything's got to be on the table. And so I just want to make sure I go on the record today in this discussion that I think she did an extraordinary job. And I'm sure that there's a part of her is like, my God, I was just asked, what's the line about women having to, dance with high heels backwards or whatever that is? Like, everything women do is far harder than what men have to do. She was just given one of the hardest assignments that any politician has ever been given, and she did a phenomenal job. And I'm really proud of her. Honestly, as somebody, I've known her sister, Maya, is a good friend. Maya's, I know Tony West, Maya's husband, for 30 years. I mean, I know all these folks. I did a lot of work in Northern California for a long time. And so I'm just really proud of Kamala. And, I think that she saw herself as an underdog. So I think she realized how unlikely it was she was going to be successful, and how serendipitous this all was, and how hard it was going to be for a woman, a biracial woman from Northern California, who didn't go through a primary to win. And so I think she did an amazing job. And we'll, all the details about what happened, why didn't we get more vote, all this stuff, we're going to have time to go through all this. We all need to take time. None of this stuff is too important to do quickly, right? You should not want anybody who is doing this analysis for you to do it quickly. The other thing I just want to say, because this is my family here, is that there's no question that I'm going to get viciously attacked by a lot of people, for rose-colored glasses, for whatever it is, right? And I don't want people to get upset about that. I'm not going to get upset about it. I'm expecting it. I don't really care. I'm at a point in my career in life that I don't really care. Some of you have noticed that during the course of Hopium, there have been journalists and others who've taken shots at me. I've never responded back to it. I just think it's a waste of my time. But that's going to happen. I just want everyone to know, like, it's okay. I don't care. It's not going to bother me. I have all of you. I have this higher calling. I have other things, but you're going to see people, in all likelihood, takes really significant shots at me and blame me for various things, like the fact that I wasn't quick to call on Biden to not run, right? That's going to be a major area that I helped prop up Biden for too long. Okay, let's have that conversation. I'm happy to have that conversation, right? I have no regrets about anything I've done over the last 18, 20 months with Hopium. I don't have any regrets. I think, if anything, the only regret, and it's not really a regret, is that I wish I had been a little bit more aggressive in helping the camp. I think that part of what happened with the campaign is that because of the change in that month period of crisis, the campaign didn't get to evolve organically the way it would have during that period. And so some of the ways that the campaign, I think, would have evolved didn't happen properly. It became inorganic, and it was out of just crisis, right? It was out of making sure they could pick a VP and like just, get through the next day and make sure Kamala's events all came off, which by the way, were so amazing. I do think the campaign did a lot of reinvention. I think that the stuff they did with influencers and podcasts and the way they use movie, stars and the Oprah show, there was a lot of invention and reinvention and experimentation in this campaign. I think the Kamala HQ was really powerful and great rapid response stuff. So I do think that they did do, but it was all under duress as opposed to it being strategic. And I'm sure that all the senior people in the campaign like wish they had an extra month, right, to have like worked through all of these things, because usually a presidential campaign goes on for like 18 months. And so you're trying stuff, you learn, you win, you try a new thing, right? And they didn't have any room to try things and experiment. It was all compressed so much. And so I think I think that I wish now in retrospect, there were a few things that I wish I was a little bit more aggressive about prosecuting internally with them. But these are all my friends, and I knew how hard what they were doing was, and I didn't want to bother them, right? I mean, they were getting, these guys got, in my view, they did a phenomenal job, and so that's the only. These are teeny regrets, not serious regrets. Let me go into some more questions. Yeah, I mean, let me look at these questions. A lot of questions about the popular vote. Yeah, I mean, Dale, I think I covered your question, Dale Smith. Hey, Dale, how are you? And let me just see other questions here. A lot of questions just about the popular vote. I mean, there's still a lot of votes to be counted, millions, maybe even 10 million votes. So we just have to, California counts for like 3 weeks, and there's going to be a lot of votes in there. I'm reading your questions, and can Tug? I'll bring Tug up at another event. It's hard to get him up the stairs. He's 70 pounds of bulldog fun, and he doesn't walk as well as he used to. So it's stairs are a little bit of an issue for him. So, but I will introduce you, and I'll send some pictures. I mean, I haven't really introduced everybody as much to Tug as I wanted, because in part he's really old, and I was always worried that somehow he wouldn't make it through the election. And so he's, but he's an amazing dog. He just had his 12th birthday, and you should know, some of you know this because I talk about this, but when I sit in the morning and produce Hopium, I sit in a room with him and we hang out together, and he's always there. So he's part of the muse, the Hopium muse, and I do it to keep him company because he's old, and he's been a very loyal dog. He was here with the raising of all three of my kids. And let me go to Susan Wagner had a question. Let me just go pull it up. Let me read Susan's question because it's a little bit complicated. And it's an interesting question. Do you think there would be some usefulness to the leaders of the various constituencies in support of the democratic effort getting together and not sticking to the stay in your lane mentality that seemed to be so pervasive in this effort? personally would love to see the RAT. I don't know what the RAT is, Susan, and people like yourself and the party and the grassroots sitting at the same table. Yeah, look, I I'm not happy. When I was saying earlier, there are things that I wish it had happened. I'm not happy with how, with the fact that many of the organized, these kind of new grassroots groups, um, like Markers for Democracy and you know, all of you, right? I mean, so many groups. I'm so tired that um, that that all of you didn't get sort of formally brought in to the family as constituency groups, right? And as part new muscles and new aspects of the family. I think that would have happened if there wasn't the crisis and the change. I think that the bandwidth of the campaign shrunk down and they just had to like execute in front of them every day. And the and yeah, I mean, there is in addition to groups like Minus Touch, right, and Career Newsroom, there are there are new and important players that need to be, you know, at some kind of new set of tables. And you know, I don't know how that's going to happen, but yes, Susan, and Susan's aware. I mean, Susan Wagner has been unbelievably dear friend through all of this, is aware that I made efforts and she made efforts and we all to, you know, get the grassroots groups included in the coordinated campaigns. And I think all of this stuff would have happened, Susan, if we didn't have the crisis that happened. And I think that's part of what I was getting at, is that some of the natural organic evolution of this campaign would have happened differently if we didn't have the crisis and the change. They just called Tammy Baldwin formally to win. We won in Michigan as well. Alyssa Slotkin won, and Rubin looks like he's going to win. I do know that, and I'll put this in Hopium, is that they do need help with ballot curing in Jackie Rosen's race for any of you who, and I don't have a link to that. And so we need help with ballot curing in Nevada. And I'll try to get a link, but if anybody has a link, can you just put it in the chat or in the Q&A? And but also you can just go to the Nevada Democratic Party and just see, you know, what they have for us there. Let me just look at other questions. Yeah, I mean, look, guys, I think that just reading these various questions, let me okay. Let me try to address some of the stuff that's come up. I have a presentation called "With Democrats Things Get Better," which if you haven't watched, it would be sort of a nurturing thing to go watch. It's on the site. You can find it. And I'm going to do a new version of it because I have to. I just want to be very clear about sort of one thing. And when I talk about the things that I didn't, the other thing that I didn't do adequately is we need to have a very, very big and robust and respectful conversation in the Democratic Party about our inability to take credit and get credit for our repeated strong economic stewardship. Donald Trump was given one of the strongest economies in modern history in 2017, and he's now going to be given an even better one in 2021. And we've now had in 2000 and 2016 and 2024, the elections we lost. In every case, the economy was in unbelievably good shape when we lost those elections. And as all of you who are true Hopiumites would know, I believe that us learning how to get credit and take credit for the fact that when we're in power, everything gets better, and when they're in power, everything goes to shit, is actually something that we should make part of the core understanding of what the Democratic Party is about. I'm a dissenter in the way that Kamala, now that the campaign's over, I have one big worry about the campaign, which is that if inflation was our Achilles heel, why did we talk about it so much? And I was concerned that by spending so much time telling everybody that prices are too high, that we were making Donald Trump's arguments for him. And I know that there's going to be a mountain of data and focus groups showing that we had to show that we heard people and everything else. But there is sort of a basic rule in politics, is that you don't make your opponent's arguments for them. And I think this is going to be a thing that we're going to have to really work through. I also believe that the core of Trumpism is the core of what has been the core of the Republican offering since the mid 1960s, when they adopted the Southern strategy. I mean, to do a little bit of history here, when our party became a leader of the civil rights movement in the going back to the 1950s, but into the 1960s, and Kennedy and Johnson sort of embraced the civil rights movement, the party that had been the party of racial reconciliation in America, the Republican Party, could have joined us in this, right? There could have been a two-party commitment to racial reconciliation and racial and multiracial democracy and all this stuff. But the Republicans came up with, in the mid 1960s, a strategy called the Southern strategy, which was to reverse the two parties' positions on racial reconciliation and to run on exploitation of racial fear and pull all the Southern states away from us that had been the foundation of the Democratic majority going all the way back to the beginning of the 19th century. And that strategy worked, right? And Barack Obama was the first, when he won and got 53% of the vote in 2008, he was the first Democratic president in history to win without winning any states in the Deep South. And we had made that transition from being a Southern-based party to now the next party that we were, because the Republicans took all the Southern states away from us through something called the Southern strategy. And this decision to do that, to become the party of the Southern strategy and to become the party of exploitation of racial fear, is a tragic moment in our history, and it is the origin point 60 years later to what we're facing now, and that the power of exploitation of racial fear and otherness is still the central fuel of Trumpism. It's not economic grievance in my mind, and I think this has been a misunderstood thing inside of our family. I think there have been a lot of people who have misread, I think, the core transaction that Trump is really having. Well, then, Simon, what's the explanation for Black and Hispanic voters voting at him at higher levels? We're going to have to talk about all that, right? But because that challenges my theory, right? Well, if he's a racist and a bigot and a misogynist and a xenophobe, why are Black and Hispanics voting for him at higher levels than in the past? Well, I'm open to have that conversation, right? But I think this notion that there has been sort of a devastation of the working class in the United States is not borne out by data and fact. And in fact, working class Americans have advanced dramatically under Biden. They advanced dramatically under. I think that part of what happened is we lost the communications war over the economy. And Biden also went into his presidency in a very low standing on economic issues. He won the election because of his success on COVID, but he had a low standing on the economy. And so I think we have to be very, very, very careful about how we approach. And one of the things that I liked about what Kamala did was her frame around, I want people not just to get by, but to get ahead. I thought that was really powerful, right? I thought that was an amazing frame, because I think that part of my theory is that we have to get on the right side of opportunity for young, particularly for young men who are at the beginning of their work lives, who want to believe they're going to have opportunities in their lives. And when they see Trump dancing around with Elon Musk, the greatest entrepreneur of his generation, and other business people that are wealthy, that's, they see their lives as being part of those successful people and wanting to be like them. And I think that we have to get reconnected to opportunity again. And I think that she got a long way there. She made enormous strides in that. But this is I think this is going to become a major dividing line in our family, which is that, do you believe that we make progress by creating opportunity or by creating more government? And I think that this is an historic kind of area of debate in the center left. I'm a little bit more on the opportunity side than the government side. And because I think it's actually polls much better in addition to being more effective policy. But that is going to be an area of spirited debate in the family going forward about why it is that we didn't get more credit for the economy being so strong. Why didn't we do a better job at explaining to our own voters that the inflation we were experiencing was largely fueled by Russia and by Saudi Arabia and by COVID and not by our economic policies? I mean, we did not manage the domestic US conversation around the economy properly, in my view, regardless of what we did. I think we allowed them to define the terms of the debate on an issue that was always going to be one of the most important issues in the election. And I think that, the Biden world did a lot right, but this is not one of them. And it may have ended up being a very costly thing. Let me end by just saying that, again, love you guys. This has been, I mean, honestly, I had no idea. And when I've said this, you've heard me say this before. When I started Hopium, I actually had really no idea what I was doing. And I didn't know if it was going to work. And I actually had some outside consulting stuff just to act as a backdrop. And by the end of the year, Hopium was making enough money that I could do it full time. And I've been doing it full time. I don't know what's going to happen with me. I don't know what's going to happen with Hopium. I don't know. I just want to be really clear about this. I thought we were going to win this election. And we haven't. And so we all have, we need time. We need to take time. We need to give ourselves space and time. Some people have talked about grieving and other people have, but long walks, I'm going to work out like a fiend now and and really start exercising. I've cut my exercise time down too much, I think, in recent months. I'm going to go visit my daughter at college. I've got some friends in Miami I want to go visit who I haven't seen in a long time. And I'm going to live a little bit. And we all need to do that, right? Because frankly, we don't have urgent work right now. We just don't. And we have work we need to do, but it's not urgent work. And so enjoy the time, right? We'll get back into urgent work soon, right? January, February, whatever it is. But enjoy yourselves, right? And give yourself some time back and take care of yourselves and we need to take care of each other in all this. I got a text from a friend of mine this morning who runs an organization in democratic politics. And she said, what do we do? And I said, number one is we got to look out for each other, and that's, I think, really important. And I want, the final thing I'll say to all of you, in addition to just thank you, is that I want you to know how important it is for me that I do my best for you every day. It's hard. I know that sounds cliched and kind of ridiculous, but I so admire and love the community that we're in. And one of the reasons I haven't traveled, some of you want me to come to California. I can't produce Hopium and travel like the way I was. I did a few trips and it was like, I need 4 to 5 hours to do this thing every day. And if I'm traveling, I'm in a hotel room, I got to check out by 11, right? Like it's just, I haven't traveled, right? Because I've been here every morning, getting up and like, what does everybody need to know today? And so I want you to know that whatever happens here, how many ever days, however this transforms, this is really important to me. This is really, really important to me. I mean, I can't tell you how much fun I had making my coffee in the morning, sitting with Tug, and knowing that I was going to be sending something that would go to all of you. And then I'd get comments back, and I would be looking at the comments like, "Do people like it today? Did it connect? Was it interesting and helpful?" Right? And we're going to wrap up here, but so all that feedback I get and all the engagement has been awesome. And Hopium's exploded in the last few weeks, and we have a lot of new people. There may be a lot of new people here today that have never been on one of these discussions. And I need all of you to be thinking about what we do next, right? And we'll start next week. We're not going to do this now. Maybe midweek next week, I'll set up an open thread, and then you can weigh in and start helping me understand how to take this thing and move it into a place where it continues to be its highest and best use, right? And it isn't going to be the same. We're not going to do what we just did. We have to evolve. We have to change. And I don't know how that is, what that means, because things are changing. We have to evolve with it. So anyway, love you guys. Thank you so much. Yeah, like unhappy day. And we got to live with that unhappiness. But we also have to stare it in the eye and get to the other side of it. Right? I mean, that's really important. We can't avoid it. It's there. It's meaningful. It's deep. It's powerful. So we got to go in there and we got to come out the other side. And that may take a while, and that's okay. But remember, we just Hopium is hope with a plan. We don't just expect elections to turn out well. We do the work to make it so. My family here, we did our part this time, right? We did our part. And you should be really, feel like you left it all on the playing field and that we did our part here. And I'm really grateful for that. I feel like we did really important things, and I'll be talking about that more in the next few days. But thanks, everybody. I'll be back to you, and I'll be in touch tomorrow. Take care.